What is going on, everybody, and welcome back to another video. So today we're going to be talking about Graham Potter getting sacked. I wanted to wait a little bit to see what happens with the situation, because obviously the news came out last night and everyone was making videos on it, tweeting about it. A lot of the clowns came out of the woodwork again, to be fair. Some people just literally dancing on a man's grave, metaphorical grave, so to speak. But today we're going to talk about him getting sacked. Did he deserve to get sacked? Why I think he got sacked, and then we're going to talk about who should be Chelsea's next manager, because I think that's the big question. And there's a few big names linked, but yeah, we'll talk about that towards the end of the video. In terms of Graham Potter getting sacked, I think it was kind of coming. I think it's been coming for a long time. I think the fans never really took to him fully, at least a lot of them didn't. I think a lot of people are bitter that Thomas Tuchel got sacked, regardless whether you think it was justified or not. I think if the Thomas Tuchel situation wasn't that bad behind the scenes, they wouldn't have got rid of him. Obviously, we know what they tried to do with Graham Potter, but ultimately it seemed like he was a bit out of his depth when it came to managing Chelsea. And there was almost this kind of doom from the start feel. I backed Graham Potter up until recently, to be fair. Like, to me, the Dortmund games were make or break, and we managed to get through against them. And, the form looked to be picking up. The Everton game was disappointing, obviously, but yeah, overall, the results, you can't look away from him. He's got like a 30% win rate. It's pretty disgraceful. He had some good performances though. I think the Dortmund Champions League games, the AC Milan Champions League games, it's not like he did nothing in his time. And of course, you have to say he's got to be one of the most unlucky managers of all time. Like those injuries, bro. Like between just before the World Cup and then the first the end of December, January, like the amount of injuries we had was shocking. Like it was some of our best players as well. Reece James, Chilwell, Kante. Kante played like 40 minutes on the Graham Potter in the entire time he was here. That's crazy. In fact, it might have been less than that. But I think overall he was quite unlucky. I also think, no preseason. They didn't even buy him a striker in January, and it looked like that's our problem. We can't score goals. Although I think it runs a little deeper than that. If you still can't score goals, I know we struggled under Tuchel to score goals, but we'd also always get bailed out by a Mason Mount. Usually Mason Mount, who this season's been dreadful. But obviously, all that doesn't excuse how poor the results have been. You're managing Chelsea. They spent almost 300 million on you, bro, and the results are not improving at all. You're losing to teams like Aston Villa at home. To be fair, Aston Villa, though, they're the third best team in the league since Emery took over, I think, overall. So they're a very good side, but they had 2 shots and we had 26, bro. So unfortunate. I know a lot of people will say the job was way too big for him at the end of the day. Well, it does seem like a bit of a massive step up to go from Brighton to Chelsea. I think he did a good job at Brighton. A lot of people are like, oh, 17th, 15th, 12th, or whatever the finishes were. But I mean, this year, a lot of people give credit to the Zerbi. That Brighton team was doing very well under Graham Potter as well. They were still basically in the same position. I think they would have been doing just as well if he stayed there. Although I do think the step up from Brighton to Chelsea is massive. When you talk about the difference in players, the difference in egos, bro. Like the Chelsea squad, they have such massive egos, bro. I don't know why some of them do, because they are fucking dog shit. Like some of these players, man, they've a lot of them have won everything. A lot of them have won trophies here and there. A lot of them come in for big money, so they expect to be the man, right? And I think Graham Potter hasn't dealt with players like that. And I think they probably started walking all over him from day one. They didn't respect him because he hasn't won anything. I think there was that kind of thing. Like you think of some of the young managers that have come into Chelsea. I know Graham Potter's not exactly young, but in terms of his managerial career, he is. Frank AVB. I mean, I think Frank managed to get us through that first season just because he brought in a lot of young players, right? They played for him, but in that second season, once he started getting his signings, bro, it was kind of just downhill, and AVB was downhill from like game one, pretty much. I just think when you manage Chelsea, you have to have the biggest ego in the room if you're the manager, right? And Mourinho, Conte, even Angelotti, even though he's not the loudest, I mean, clearly he's very well respected. The guy's managed at every big club ever, bro. So realistically, you probably should have got like a Leicester job, a Everton job, a West Ham job. One of those next tier clubs from Brighton. Some people were saying Aston Villa would have been a good job for him. And to be fair, if he wants to, he could go straight to Leicester now. I don't know if he'll want to do that considering they're in a relegation battle. Even maybe Tottenham would be interested. I don't know, but I think Graham Potter will easily get another job. Even the England job, I think, would be perfect for him. He's Mr. PR man. I think that's what they want. He's a better version of Gareth Southgate in terms of that. But ultimately, I just think it was his personality was not the right fit for this team. These players need to be whipped into shape somewhat, and I think Thomas Tuchel even struggled with that, and he's a much stronger personality than Graham Potter was. But overall, did he deserve to be sacked? I think it was one of those where even me, someone who had backed him fully, and was still kind of backing him. After that Aston Villa game, was kind of enough is enough. We need to see something else because nothing's improving now. Like you've even had 2 months with these new players. I know it's not a lot of time, but we're still losing and conceding silly goals. The lineups, the lineups were just starting to get ridiculous. You know, you're playing the best wing back in the world as a centre back. You know what I mean? It seemed like every time he makes a sub, it's too late, because you remember the Tottenham game. As soon as he's about to make a sub, they score and make it 2-0, game over. Right before they come on. They did it again against Aston Villa. They scored right before we were about to make subs to change the game. So I think his adjustments were poor. I think sometimes his lineups, his tactics, no, they weren't getting through. I think it was time to go. I think the fans were fed up. I think some of the ownership was fed up. Considering he was hired before some of those directors and stuff got here, they probably weren't fully convinced. Let's talk about who could replace him now. Two big names for me. These are the only two I will discuss, in my opinion, who I think are up to it, yeah. Obviously, Nagelsmann is going to be the main guy because he just managed Bayern Munich. He had a really good first season, and this year they kind of sacked him out the blue, to be fair. Maybe they didn't think they could beat Man City with him as the manager. I don't know. But he's obviously a very young manager, so Chelsea's record with young managers, like I said, not great, but he has a great track record. He's much more of a personality than Graham Potter is, and he is much more renowned to be a top coach. But he will need a lot of time, and there's rumors that he won't take the job now, but he is interested. But who knows, bro? They said we wouldn't get Enzo Fernandez now, but that Real Madrid tie is an interesting one. If you believe we could win the Champions League, or you can convince the manager, then of course they'll come in now. The only other name I want to discuss, apart from Nagelsmann, is Enrique, because I think he's interesting. To me, though, if they wanted Enrique, they would have sacked Potter like a month ago and just got him then, because he's been available the whole time. And I think Enrique is a good coach. Like, obviously, he's done very well with Barcelona when, you know, Barcelona had the best team in the world. I think he managed a Spain team, like, coming off their golden generation where they didn't have as much talent. You know, man's using, like, Alvaro, Morata, and they weren't doing bad. It's just, like, they lost to Morocco in the World Cup. You know what I mean? You should be winning that. I just think he struggles to make adjustments. Like, he's very stuck to his philosophy and he doesn't really change it. And that's one thing when you come to Chelsea, he wants to play much more attractive football than what we're used to playing. We can see these players can't play nothing but part the boss counter attack. And they can't even counter attack. So trying to play attractive sort of vertical football with these guys is going to be very difficult. So it's questions whether his style. Obviously, he is a bit older and he is a lot more experienced. I'm sure they'll respect him. He speaks Spanish, which helps considering, you know, we just signed Enzo Fernandez and we have João Felix and a lot of other players who can speak Spanish. So that could be good. But to me, those are the only two candidates. Like, I've seen people link us to the Sporting manager, like Amorim or whatever his name is. To me, that's doing the same thing we did with Graham Potter. Like, man's managing Sporting. He's also like 38. So I feel like that's a massive risk. I've seen people linking us to the Frankfurt manager again. He's a bit older, but massive risk there. I think you need to go for someone who's tried and tested, who has experience at a big club. Enrique and Nagelsmann do. Zidane isn't going to take the job, bro. If he wanted a Prem job, he would have taken that United job last year. Or whenever Solskjaer got sacked, he was in the running and he said he don't want to manage the Premier League. I think he's waiting for a PSG, or maybe he'll go back to Real Madrid or something. Maybe he'll just retire from management. The other names, Pochettino, I'm not convinced. I do think he is a bit like shat on, considering I think he did pretty well with Tottenham, although they did kind of bottle it when it mattered most. He didn't obviously win the Champions League with PSG, but no one did. So, but I just don't want a former Tottenham manager, Chelsea manager. I think that makes perfect sense to me why he shouldn't be the manager. And everyone else, like Brendan Rodgers, no, bro. De Zerbi, I feel like that would be a joke. Just go back to Brighton and yonk their next manager. That would be crazy. Obviously, like Thomas Frank's not been linked, although he was before. To me, it's between those two, Enrique and Nagelsmann. I've seen people, they're pretty even. I've seen some polls on Twitter where Nagelsmann is slightly ahead, but Enrique is right there. I think there's pros and cons to both. It's kind of like, who do you want? Do you want the more experienced manager, or do you want a younger manager and try and build for the project? Because that's the issue. We couldn't be patient with Potter. Are we going to be patient with Nagelsmann, even though he's a better coach? Are the players going to listen to him? Because there's some players who are older than him. Like Thiago Silva's older than him. I think Azpilicueta might even be older than him. So there is that as well. But yeah, those are my take on the situation. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. I'll see you all in the next one.